My name is Elena, and at 36 years old, I never imagined I'd be sitting in a lawyer's office 3 weeks after burying my husband, listening to my own cousin claim that her daughter was his child. But there I was, holding a tissue in one hand and a forged document in the other, trying not to laugh at the sheer audacity of it all. Let me take you back to the beginning, because this story doesn't start with betrayal. It starts with love. Real, genuine, once-in-a-lifetime love. I met Marcus 7 years ago at a community art festival in downtown Seattle. I had been volunteering at the face painting booth, helping kids transform into butterflies and superheroes, when I noticed him bidding on a sculpture at the silent auction. It was a bronze piece of intertwined hands, reaching toward each other but never quite touching. I had been admiring it all afternoon, imagining it in the corner of my living room where the evening light would catch the curves just right. When the auction closed, Marcus won. But instead of taking his prize and leaving, he walked straight over to me with that sculpture cradled in his arms like it was made of glass. "I saw you looking at this earlier," he said, and his voice had this warmth to it that made me feel like we'd known each other for years. "The way your face lit up when you noticed it, I knew it had to be yours." I tried to refuse, of course, told him he paid good money for it, that he shouldn't just give it away to a stranger. But Marcus had this smile, the kind that crinkled the corners of his dark brown eyes, and he said something I'd never forget. "Art belongs with people who understand it. You saw something in this piece that spoke to you. That connection matters more than money." That was Marcus, thoughtful, observant, generous in ways that had nothing to do with his bank account, and everything to do with his heart. He was a software architect, one of those brilliant minds who could solve complex problems but never made you feel small for not understanding the technical details. He asked real questions about people's lives and actually listened to the answers. We had our first date the very next evening at a small Italian restaurant in Capitol Hill. We talked for 4 hours straight, and when the restaurant closed, we walked along the waterfront until midnight, still finding new things to say to each other. I fell in love with him that night, though I didn't say it out loud for another 3 months. Marcus proposed to me on the same waterfront where we'd walked that first night, with the sculpture he'd given me sitting in a backpack because he wanted to bring the symbol of our beginning to our new beginning. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at a botanical garden, surrounded by flowering cherry trees and the people who mattered most to us. We bought our house in Queen Anne a year after the wedding. It was a craftsman-style home built in the 1920s, with original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, and a stone fireplace that made the whole living room feel like a warm embrace. At $950,000, it stretched our budget. But Marcus had just been promoted to senior architect at his company, and my graphic design business was finally turning a real profit. We could make it work. The house needed updating, sure, but it had character and potential. We spent weekends refinishing the floors, painting the walls in warm earth tones, and planting a garden in the backyard. Marcus built raised beds for vegetables, and I filled the borders with flowers, lavender and roses and black-eyed Susans that attracted butterflies all summer long. Life was good. No, life was beautiful. We had our struggles, of course. What marriage doesn't? But we talked through everything, supported each other's dreams, and built something solid together. The only shadow over our happiness was the one thing we both wanted but couldn't seem to have: children. We started trying to conceive about 2 years into our marriage. At first, it was exciting, hopeful, but once turned into a year, and 2 years. We saw specialists, ran tests, tried treatments. I went through 3 rounds of IVF that left me emotionally exhausted and physically drained. Each negative pregnancy test felt like a small death, another dream slipping away. The 3rd failed IVF attempt broke something in both of us. We sat in our car in the clinic parking lot, holding hands in silence, and I think we both knew we couldn't keep doing this to ourselves. "Maybe this isn't our path," Marcus said quietly, his thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. Maybe we're meant to build our family differently. Or maybe it's just you and me. And Elena, if it's just us, that's enough. You're enough. I cried then, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. Relief that he wasn't disappointed in me, that he didn't blame me for my body's failure to do what seemed to come so easily to everyone else. Relief that we could stop the painful treatments and find a new way forward. We decided to focus on what we had instead of what we didn't. We traveled to Japan and hiked through bamboo forests. We took a cooking class together and learned to make pasta from scratch. Marcus taught himself woodworking and built beautiful custom furniture for our home. I expanded my design business, taking on bigger clients and more challenging projects. Our life was full, even if it looked different than we'd originally planned. And then there was my cousin Vanessa. Vanessa was my mother's sister's daughter, 4 years younger than me at 32. We'd grown up together, spent summers at our grandmother's lake house, shared secrets and inside jokes the way cousins do. But somewhere along the way, things had shifted between us. There was a competitiveness from her side that I never quite understood, like she was keeping score in a game I didn't know I was playing. When I got into design school, Vanessa suddenly decided she wanted to be an artist too. When I started dating Marcus, she made comments about how she preferred men with more adventurous spirits, as if Marcus's steady nature was somehow a flaw. When we bought our house, she complained for months about the cost of rent in Seattle and how unfair it was that some people could afford to buy while others struggled. Marcus noticed the dynamic early on. "She's jealous of you," he said, after a particularly uncomfortable family dinner where Vanessa had made pointed comments about my success. Not in a healthy, motivating way. It's something darker. I defended her back then. We were family. She was just going through a rough patch. Things would get better. They didn't. 3 years ago, Vanessa started dating a guy named Derek. He was a musician, played guitar in local bars, and always had big dreams about getting discovered. He was charming in that effortless way some people have, with long hair and tattoos and a motorcycle that made our conservative aunt clutch her pearls. My parents didn't approve, and Vanessa seemed to take a perverse pleasure in their disapproval. Their relationship was volatile. They'd break up dramatically, Vanessa would show up at my house crying, and then 3 days later they'd be back together like nothing had happened. It was exhausting to witness, but I tried to be supportive because that's what family does. Then came the pregnancy announcement. It was at our annual 4th of July family barbecue at my parents' house. Vanessa stood up during dinner, tapped her glass to get everyone's attention, and announced that she and Derek were expecting a baby. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother recovered first, pasting on a smile and offering congratulations, but I could see the worry in her eyes. My father looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. I felt a sharp stab of pain in my chest, that old familiar ache of wanting something I couldn't have. But I pushed it down, stood up, and hugged my cousin. "Congratulations, Vanessa. That's wonderful news." She hugged me back, but there was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Triumph, maybe, like she'd won something. The pregnancy was difficult from what I could tell. Vanessa called me often, complaining about morning sickness, back pain. Derek's lack of support. I did what I could, bringing her groceries when she was too tired to shop, listening to her vent when she needed someone to talk to. And when baby Sophia was born, a healthy 7 pounds 3 ounces, I was at the hospital within hours, with flowers and a handmade baby blanket I'd spent months crocheting. Sophia was perfect, with wispy dark hair and tiny fingers that gripped mine with surprising strength. I felt that familiar ache again, but also genuine love for this little person who was part of my family. "Will you be her godmother?" Vanessa asked me that day in the hospital, her voice soft with exhaustion. "I can't think of anyone better." "Of course," I said, tears in my eyes. "I'd be honored." What I didn't know then was that this precious baby would become the weapon my cousin would use to try to destroy me. Marcus was kind to Vanessa and Sophia, but I noticed he kept a certain distance. At the time, I thought it was because of our infertility struggles, that being around a baby might be painful for him. He never complained, always smiled and made appropriate comments when Vanessa brought Sophia to family gatherings, but he didn't seek out time with them. Looking back now, I understand why. Life continued. Sophia grew from infant to toddler. Vanessa and Derek's relationship remained tumultuous. They broke up when Sophia was 6 months old, got back together when she was 8 months, broke up again when she was a year old. This time, it seemed permanent. Derek moved to Portland with a new girlfriend, leaving Vanessa to raise Sophia alone with minimal child support. I helped where I could, babysitting when Vanessa had job interviews, buying diapers and formula when money was tight, taking Sophia for weekend afternoons so Vanessa could have a break. I loved that little girl like she was my own, which made what eventually happened so much more devastating. Marcus and I celebrated our 6th anniversary last spring with a weekend trip to the San Juan Islands. We stayed in a bed and breakfast overlooking the water, went whale watching, ate fresh seafood, and talked about our future. We discussed maybe adopting someday, or becoming foster parents, or simply embracing our life as it was, and finding other ways to nurture and care for people. Whatever we decide, Marcus said, as we watched the sunset from our room's balcony, I want you to know that you've given me the best years of my life. I wouldn't change a single thing about our journey together. I believed him. God, I believed every word. 2 months after that perfect weekend, Marcus complained of a severe headache one Tuesday morning. He'd been getting migraines occasionally, nothing that seemed alarming. He took some medication and went to work anyway, because he had an important presentation that afternoon. The call came at 2:17 in the afternoon. A nurse from Seattle General Hospital. Marcus had collapsed during his presentation. They'd called an ambulance. I needed to come right away. I don't remember the drive to the hospital. Don't remember parking or finding the emergency room. My next clear memory is of a doctor with kind eyes and a gentle voice, explaining that Marcus had suffered a massive brain aneurysm. They'd done everything they could, but the damage was too severe. He was gone. Just like that. 6 years of marriage. 7 years of knowing each other. A lifetime of plans and dreams, all ended in a hospital corridor that smelled like antiseptic and despair. I was 36 years old and a widow. The funeral was a blur. Hundreds of people showed up, colleagues from Marcus's company, clients from my business, friends we'd made over the years, family from both sides. Everyone had stories about Marcus's kindness, his brilliant mind, his infectious laugh. I sat in the front row of the church and felt like I was watching someone else's life, not my own. Vanessa was there, but only briefly. She stayed in the back during the service, left before the reception. Later, I found out that she'd told people Sophia was sick and she couldn't find a babysitter, which struck me as odd since she could have asked me or any of a dozen family members who would have been happy to help. But I was too deep in my grief to think much about it at the time. The days after the funeral were the darkest of my life. I wandered through our house touching Marcus's things, his coffee mug still in the sink, his reading glasses on the nightstand, his jacket hanging by the door. The silence was suffocating. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't imagine how I was supposed to keep existing in a world that no longer had Marcus in it. My mother came to stay with me for the first week, cooking meals I couldn't eat and sitting with me while I cried. My best friend Rachel canceled all her plans and showed up every morning to make sure I got out of bed. And slowly, painfully, I started to function again. Not live, not really, but function. 3 weeks after we buried Marcus, I got a call from Vanessa. I need to talk to you about something important, she said, her voice oddly formal. Can I come over today? Sure, I said, grateful for any distraction from my grief. Is everything okay with Sophia? Sophia's fine. This is about something else. I'll be there at 2. She arrived exactly on time, which was unusual for Vanessa. She was wearing a new dress I'd never seen before, and her hair was professionally styled. She carried a large envelope and her phone. "Thanks for seeing me," she said as she came inside. "I know this is a difficult time." We sat in the living room, the same room where Marcus and I had spent countless evenings, reading or watching movies or just talking. I offered her coffee, which she declined. "Elena, I need to tell you something," Vanessa said, her hands fidgeting with the envelope. "Something I've been keeping secret for a long time." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "What is it?" She took a deep breath like she was preparing for a performance. "Sophia isn't Derek's daughter. She's Marcus's." The words hung in the air between us. Impossible. Absurd. I actually laughed, a short, sharp sound that surprised us both. "What are you talking about?" "Marcus and I had an affair about 3.5 years ago," Vanessa said, her voice gaining confidence now that she'd started. "It only lasted a few months, but Sophia is the result. Marcus knew. He wanted to do the right thing by his daughter. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you." I stared at my cousin, searching her face for any sign that this was some kind of terrible joke. But she looked serious, determined. "That's impossible," I said slowly. "Marcus would never." "I have proof," Vanessa interrupted, pulling papers from the envelope. "This is Marcus's will. He updated it 6 months ago to include provisions for Sophia. Half of this house is supposed to go to her as his biological daughter." She handed me the document. I took it with numb fingers, scanning the typed pages. It looked official enough, with legal language about assets and beneficiaries, and at the bottom, a signature that was supposed to be Marcus's. But I knew Marcus's signature. I'd seen it thousands of times on cards, on our mortgage documents, on the marriage certificate that hung in our bedroom. This signature was close, but it wasn't quite right. The M was too angular, the S at the end too rushed. "This is a forgery," I said, my voice eerily calm. "It's not," Vanessa insisted. "I know this is hard to hear, Elena, but Marcus loved Sophia. He wanted to provide for her. With him gone, it's only fair that his daughter receives her inheritance." I looked at my cousin, really looked at her, and saw something I'd been blind to for years. This wasn't grief or confusion or even jealousy. This was calculation. Cold, deliberate calculation. "Get out of my house," I said quietly. "Elena, please just listen." "Get out," I repeated, louder this time. "And take your forged document with you." Vanessa's expression hardened. "I was trying to do this nicely, but if you won't cooperate, I'll take this to court. DNA tests will prove Sophia is Marcus's daughter, and then you'll have to give up half of everything. This house, his life insurance, his retirement accounts, all of it." "DNA tests will prove exactly nothing," I said, standing up, "because Sophia isn't Marcus's daughter, and we both know it. So whatever game you're playing, whatever desperate situation has driven you to this, it ends now." "You're in denial," Vanessa said, also standing. "I understand. Finding out your husband was unfaithful is painful, but facts are facts, Elena. Marcus and I were together, and Sophia is the proof." "Leave," I said, walking to the door and opening it. "And don't contact me again unless it's through a lawyer." Vanessa grabbed her things but paused at the door. "You always thought you were better than me," she said, her voice bitter. "Perfect Elena with her perfect husband and perfect house and perfect life. Well, your perfect husband wasn't so perfect after all, was he?" "My husband," I said, looking her straight in the eye, "was the most honest, loyal man I've ever known. Whatever lies you've convinced yourself of, whatever fantasy you've constructed, Marcus never betrayed me. Not once, not ever." "We'll see what the courts say," Vanessa replied. and walked out. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. Then, despite everything, despite the grief and shock and betrayal, I felt that same inappropriate urge to laugh that had hit me when Vanessa first made her announcement. Because there was something she didn't know, something that made her entire elaborate scheme not just cruel, but impossible. 4 years ago, Marcus had a medical issue that required surgery. He'd been experiencing pain and discomfort for months before finally seeing a urologist. The diagnosis was a varicocele, enlarged veins in his scrotum that needed surgical correction. The surgery was successful, but there were complications. The varicocele was more extensive than the initial scans had shown, and the surgeon recommended a vasectomy during the same procedure to prevent recurrence and address some additional concerns about testicular health. It was a devastating conversation. We'd already been through 3 failed IVF attempts, and now the possibility of biological children was being permanently taken away. But Marcus's health had to come first. We agreed to the vasectomy. The procedure was done 4 years ago, 3 months before Vanessa claimed their supposed affair began. 3 months before Sophia could have possibly been conceived. It was medically, biologically, absolutely impossible for Marcus to be Sophia's father. We had kept the vasectomy private, like we'd kept most of our fertility struggles private. After years of well-meaning but invasive questions from family about when we were going to have children, we'd learned to guard our medical information carefully. The only people who knew about Marcus's vasectomy were the 2 of us and his doctors. But Marcus, being the thoughtful, careful man he was, had anticipated that his medical history might become relevant someday, especially given Vanessa's pattern of boundary-crossing behavior that had been escalating over the years. 6 months before he died, Marcus had an appointment with our attorney, Gerald Hoffman. I went with him, sitting in Gerald's downtown office with its view of Elliott Bay, listening as Marcus laid out his concerns. Vanessa has been making increasingly inappropriate comments, Marcus explained to Gerald, suggesting that Elena doesn't appreciate me, that I deserve someone more attentive, that she'd be a better match for me. She sent text messages that cross lines. I've documented everything and maintained firm boundaries, but I'm worried about what she might try if something were to happen to me. Marcus pulled out a folder he'd been keeping, filled with screenshots of text messages, notes about uncomfortable interactions, dates and times of incidents. It was thorough, methodical, exactly the kind of preparation I should have expected from someone as detail-oriented as Marcus. I want to make sure Elena is protected, Marcus continued. I want my will to be ironclad, with no ambiguities about my wishes. Everything goes to Elena, and I want my medical records on file with you, specifically the documentation of my vasectomy. If Vanessa ever tries to claim that a child is mine, Elena will have proof that it's impossible. Gerald had looked concerned. You think she'd go that far? I think she's capable of anything if she's desperate enough, Marcus said. And I'd rather prepare for something that never happens than leave Elena vulnerable. We updated Marcus's will that day, properly witnessed and notarized, with Gerald retaining copies of everything. Marcus also signed releases allowing Gerald to obtain his complete medical records, including the surgical reports and follow-up tests confirming the vasectomy was successful. Just in case, Marcus had said as we left Gerald's office. I probably sound paranoid. You sound protective, I'd replied, kissing his cheek. And I love you for it. Now, standing in my living room 3 weeks after burying my husband, I realized that Marcus's protection was reaching beyond the grave. He'd seen this coming. Maybe not the specific details, but the possibility that Vanessa would try to use his death to hurt me. My hands were shaking as I picked up my phone and called Gerald Hoffman. Elena, he answered immediately, his voice warm with sympathy. How are you holding up? I need to see you, I said. Vanessa just left my house, claiming that Marcus is Sophia's father, and showing me a forged will that says she's entitled to half of our house. There was a long pause. I was afraid something like this might happen, Gerald said finally. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning? 9 o'clock? I'll be there. And Elena, bring the document she showed you. We'll need it as evidence." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through everything. The timeline of Sophia's conception, Marcus's surgery, Vanessa's increasingly strange behavior over the past few years. Things that hadn't made sense at the time suddenly clicked into place. The way Vanessa had suddenly become more interested in spending time with Marcus and me after Sophia was born. How she'd always ask detailed questions about Marcus's work, his schedule, his habits. The odd comments she'd made about how much Sophia looked like Marcus. Statements I'd dismissed as cousin rivalry, since I'd always thought Sophia looked exactly like Derek. She'd been planning this for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. And Marcus somehow had known. The next morning, I arrived at Gerald Hoffman's office 15 minutes early, clutching the forged will in a folder. The receptionist, a kind woman named Patricia who'd worked with Gerald for over 20 years, greeted me with genuine sympathy. "Mrs. Chen," she said, using my married name, "I'm so sorry for your loss." Marcus was a wonderful man. "Thank you," I managed, my voice tight. Gerald appeared in the doorway of his office, gesturing for me to come in. He was in his late 50s, with graying hair and the kind of calm, measured demeanor that made him excellent at his job. He'd handled our house purchase, our wills, and various other legal matters over the years. Marcus had trusted him completely. "Elena," he said, embracing me briefly before we sat down, "tell me everything." I walked him through Vanessa's visit, her claims about an affair, the forged will, her threats to take everything to court. Gerald listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he asked to see the document Vanessa had given me. He studied it carefully, his expression growing more serious with each page. "This is definitely forged," he said finally. "The language is completely wrong for a legal will. Phrases that no attorney would ever use. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that Marcus never came to me or any other attorney to draft this document. His actual will is on file with me and with the court. It leaves everything to you exactly as it should." Then goes on to say, "She said she'd demand DNA tests," I said, "to prove Sophia is Marcus's daughter." "Insert in the sentence, DNA tests will show exactly what we already know," Gerald replied. "That Marcus couldn't possibly be the father." He pulled out a thick file from his desk drawer. Marcus gave me copies of all his medical records, including detailed documentation of his vasectomy, and the follow-up tests confirming it was successful. The surgery was performed 4 years ago, 3 months before Sophia was conceived. It's biologically impossible, including detailed documentation of his vasectomy, and the follow-up tests confirming it was successful. The surgery was performed 4 years ago, 3 months before Sophia was conceived. It's biologically impossible, including detailed documentation of his vasectomy and the follow-up tests confirming it was successful. The surgery was performed 4 years ago, 3 months before Sophia was conceived. It's biologically impossible. Really? Gerald said firmly. What she's attempted is fraud, forgery, including detailed documentation of his vasectomy and the follow-up tests confirming it was successful. The surgery was performed 4 years ago, 3 months before Sophia was conceived. It's biologically impossible. Really? Gerald said firmly. What she's attempted is fraud, forgery, including detailed documentation of his vasectomy and the follow-up tests confirming it was successful. The surgery was performed 4 years ago, 3 months before Sophia was conceived. It's biologically impossible. It's biologically impossible. It's biologically impossible, including detailed documentation of his vasectomy and the follow-up tests. The surgery was performed for and possibly extortion. These are serious criminal charges, Elena. She could go to prison for this. On Sunday. I don't want her to go to prison, I said immediately. She's family, and Sophia is innocent in all this. Gerald nodded slowly. I understand your reluctance, but you need to consider what Vanessa has done. She waited until you were at your most vulnerable, grieving and alone, to try to steal half of everything you and Marcus built together. She created fraudulent legal documents and slandered your husband's memory. These aren't small things. I know, I said, wiping my eyes, but there has to be a way to stop her without destroying her life. Sophia needs her mother. Let me make some calls, Gerald said. I know a private investigator who might be able to help us understand what's driving Vanessa to do this. People don't usually attempt fraud of this magnitude without significant motivation. If we can understand what she needs, maybe we can find a solution that protects you without criminal charges. Okay, I agreed, whatever it takes. Gerald picked up his phone and called someone named Patricia Reeves, putting the call on speaker so I could hear. Patricia, it's Gerald Hoffman. I need your help with a sensitive situation. He explained the basics of the case, and Patricia agreed to meet with us that afternoon. Patricia Reeves turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, with short gray hair and an air of efficiency. She arrived at Gerald's office at 2 o'clock, carrying a tablet and a leather portfolio. Mrs. Chen, she said, shaking my hand firmly, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Gerald filled me in on the basics. I'll need some information from you about your cousin, and then I can start digging. I told Patricia everything I knew about Vanessa. Her work history, which was spotty at best, her relationship with Derek and their messy breakup, her address, phone number, social media accounts, Sophia's birth date and medical history, including the heart surgery she'd needed at 3 months old for a congenital defect. That surgery must have been expensive, Patricia noted. It was, I confirmed. I helped Vanessa with some of the bills. Her insurance covered most of it, but there were still significant out-of-pocket costs. I gave her $10,000 to help. Patricia made notes on her tablet. I'll start with her financial situation and go from there. Give me 3 days, and I should have a comprehensive picture of what's going on, in the first paragraph of pausing. How many days were some of the longest of my life? I tried to distract myself with work, taking on design projects. I wondered what could drive someone to create such an elaborate lie, to betray family so completely. I wondered what could drive someone to create such an elaborate lie. My mother called twice during those 3 days, both times asking if I'd heard from Vanessa. She's been acting strange, my mother said during the second call. Asking about Marcus's assets, whether he had life insurance, what the house was worth. I told her it was none of her business, but she got upset with me. Do you know what's going on? We're having some family issues, I said, keeping it vague. I'll explain everything soon, but I need to gather some information first. Well, whatever it is, I hope you two can work it out, my mother said. Family is everything. I didn't respond to that. Some of us weren't acting like family. On the third day, Patricia called requesting another meeting at Gerald's office. I drove downtown with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. Not knowing what she'd discovered, Patricia had printed out a thick stack of papers, which she spread across the conference table. Your cousin is in serious financial trouble, she said, without preamble. Credit card debt, medical bills, personal loans. She owes approximately $95,000 to various creditors, and her credit score is in the 400s. She showed me the documentation. Collections notices, demand letters, court summons for unpaid debts. It was overwhelming. She's also facing eviction, Patricia continued. She's 3 months behind on rent, and her landlord has filed paperwork to remove her from the property. She has 2 weeks to pay or vacate. Why didn't she ask for help? I said, feeling a surge of frustrated sympathy despite everything. Pride, perhaps. Or she knew the amount was too large for family to reasonably cover, Patricia said. But here's where it gets more interesting. 2 months ago, she started searching online for information about inheritance law, forged documents, and how to contest wills. She also joined several Facebook groups about single mothers seeking financial support. Patricia pulled up screenshots of Vanessa's search history and social media activity. The evidence was damning. She'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. There's more, Patricia said. I found text message exchanges between Vanessa and a friend named Michelle. They discussed the plan in detail. She handed me printed copies of the messages. I forced myself to read them, even though each word felt like a knife. Vanessa, Marcus's death might actually save me. That house is worth at least $1 million now. If I can get half of it, I'm set. But how would you even get half? You weren't married to him, Michelle said. Vanessa replied, I've been thinking about it. What if I claim Sophia was his daughter? Elena can't prove she isn't, and with him dead, he can't deny it either. Michelle responded, That's pretty dark, V. You'd really do that to your cousin? Vanessa, Elena has had everything handed to her whole life. Perfect grades, perfect career, perfect husband, perfect house. Meanwhile, I'm drowning in debt and about to be homeless with a 3-year-old. It's time for things to even out. Michelle, what about the DNA test? Won't that prove it's not true? Vanessa, I'll figure something out. Maybe I can say Marcus paid for the test and the results were positive. Who's going to check? And even if it goes to court, it'll take months. That gives me time to find another solution. Michelle, I don't know, this seems really risky. Vanessa, I'm out of options. This is my only chance. I felt sick reading my cousin's words. The cold calculation, a willingness to destroy Marcus's reputation and hurt me, all for money. There was no love here, no family loyalty, just desperation and entitlement. I also investigated Derek, Patricia continued. He's currently living in Portland and paying minimal child support, $200 a month. He has a history of domestic violence from a previous relationship and a DUI from 2 years ago. According to friends I interviewed, he has no interest in being involved in Sophia's life. Gerald had been silent through most of Patricia's presentation, but now he spoke. This gives us everything we need, Elena. We can prove that Vanessa committed fraud with clear premeditation. The text messages alone show intent. Combined with the forged will and Marcus's medical records proving he couldn't be Sophia's father, we have an airtight case. What happens if we press charges? I asked. Forgery and attempted fraud of this magnitude could result in 3 to 5 years in prison, Gerald said. Plus restitution for any legal fees you incur defending yourself. I thought about Sophia, that sweet little girl who deserved better than any of this. And if we don't press charges, then we handle it privately, Gerald said. We confront Vanessa with the evidence, make it clear that any further attempts at fraud will result in immediate criminal charges, and establish strict boundaries going forward. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. I need to think about this, I said. Can I have 24 hours? Of course, Gerald replied. But Elena, whatever you decide, you need to protect yourself. Your kindness is admirable, but it can't come at the cost of your own security. That night, I did something I hadn't been able to do since Marcus died. I went into his home office, a small room at the back of our house that still smelled faintly of his cologne. His computer sat on the desk, along with a framed photo of us from our wedding day. I opened the desk drawers, looking for something I wasn't even sure existed. In the bottom drawer, under a stack of old tax documents, I found it. A sealed envelope with my name written in Marcus's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. My dearest Elena, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've had to access the documents I left with Gerald. I wish I could have been wrong about Vanessa, but if you're here, it means I wasn't. I want you to know that nothing she claims is true. Every day I spent with you was the best day of my life. You were enough for me, exactly as you were, exactly as we were together. I never wanted anyone else, never even looked at anyone else. My heart belonged entirely to you from the moment I saw you at that art festival until my last breath. I know you, Elena. I know your generous heart, your loyalty to family, your desire to see the best in people. Those qualities are part of why I love you. But I also know that sometimes people take advantage of that kindness. Don't let Vanessa use your goodness as a weapon against you. You deserve to be protected, even if that protection has to come from documents and lawyers instead of from me holding your hand. Whatever happens, remember that you are strong, capable, and deserving of every good thing you've built. Don't let anyone steal that from you. I love you beyond measure, across time, beyond death itself. Always yours, Marcus. I pressed the letter to my chest and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. Then, with my husband's words echoing in my heart, I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I called Gerald and Patricia for a meeting. I've made my decision, I told them. I'm not pressing criminal charges, but I am going to confront Vanessa with everything we know. I'm going to give her a choice. What kind of choice? Gerald asked. She can either admit publicly that she lied, accept clear boundaries, and allow me to help her and Sophia in a structured way that doesn't involve fraud. Or she can face criminal charges and lose everything, including her daughter. Gerald nodded slowly. It's a generous offer given what she's done. But you need to be prepared for the possibility that she'll reject it. I know, I said, but I have to try, for Sophia's sake and for the memory of the family we used to be. We set up the confrontation for the following Saturday at Gerald's office, neutral territory where everything would be recorded and witnessed. Gerald sent Vanessa a formal letter requesting her presence to discuss matters related to the estate of Marcus Chen and legal claims made against said estate. Vanessa called me after receiving the letter, her voice panicked. What's this about, Elena? Why do I need to come to a lawyer's office? You made certain claims, Vanessa. Legal claims. This needs to be handled properly. Just come to the meeting. Saturday at 10. Will you listen to me? Will you at least consider what I'm saying? I'll listen, I said. That's all I can promise. Saturday morning arrived cold and rainy, Seattle weather matching my mood. I dressed carefully in a black suit, pulling my dark hair back into a professional bun. I wanted to look strong, composed, nothing like the grieving widow Vanessa had tried to exploit. Patricia arrived at Gerald's office at 9:30 to set up recording equipment. Gerald reviewed the documents one more time, arranging them in strategic order. I sat in the corner, sipping terrible office coffee and trying to calm my racing heart. At exactly 10 o'clock, Vanessa arrived. She was alone, and she looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, wrinkled clothes, hair that hadn't been washed in days. This wasn't the polished, confident cousin who'd showed up at my house 3 weeks ago. This was a desperate woman at the end of her rope. Thank you for coming, Miss Martinez, Gerald said formally, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. I sat to his right, Patricia to his left, creating a united front. Vanessa's eyes darted between us nervously. What's going on? Elena, why are all these people here? Ms. Martinez, I'm Gerald Hoffman, executor of Marcus Chen's estate and the Chen family attorney. This is Patricia Reeves, a private investigator. We're here to discuss the claims you've made regarding my client's late husband and the forged documents you've presented demanding a portion of Mrs. Chen's assets. Vanessa's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. I just showed Elena Marcus's will. There's nothing forged about it. Gerald opened a folder and pulled out the document Vanessa had given me. This document? He placed it on the desk. The one that claims Marcus updated his will to leave half of his estate to Sophia Martinez, his alleged biological daughter? Yes, Vanessa said, but her voice had lost its confidence. Marcus made that will before he died. He wanted to provide for his daughter. Interesting, Gerald said, because I prepared Marcus's actual will, and it was last updated 6 months ago. It leaves everything to his wife, Elena Chen. There is no mention of any other beneficiaries. He placed the real will beside the forgery. Note the differences in language, structure, and execution. Note also that the signature on your document doesn't match Marcus's actual signature, which I've witnessed dozens of times. Vanessa's hands were shaking. Maybe he went to a different lawyer. Maybe he didn't want you to know. Then why isn't this will filed with the court? Why doesn't it have a notary seal? Why is the legal language so amateurish that no actual attorney would have drafted it? Gerald's voice was calm but relentless. Ms. Martinez, we both know why. Because you created this document yourself, or had someone create it for you. Forgery of legal documents is a felony in Washington state. You can't prove that, Vanessa said, but her voice was barely a whisper. Patricia slid a folder across the desk. Actually, we can. Text messages between you and your friend Michelle discussing the plan. Your search history showing you looking up how to forge documents and contest wills. Financial records showing you're mounting debts and eviction notice, establishing motive. And perhaps most damning, your own words admitting that Sophia isn't Marcus's daughter and that you were lying to exploit Elena's grief. Vanessa opened the folder with trembling hands, her face going from pale to gray as she read the evidence. How did you get these? This is private. You can't use this. Everything we obtained was acquired legally, Patricia said. Your text messages were provided by your friend Michelle, who was concerned about your plans to commit fraud. Your financial records are public information available to anyone who knows where to look. And your search history was obtained from your internet service provider with a subpoena, strong a brother. But the real question, Ms. Martinez, Gerald continued, isn't how we got the information. It's what we're going to do with it. As I said, forgery and fraud are felonies. You could face 3 to 5 years in prison. And given that you attempted to defraud a grieving widow, I doubt a judge would be lenient. And Vanessa's face crumpled. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Elena, please, I'm sorry. I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do. And so you thought you'd destroy my husband's reputation? I asked, my voice harder than I'd intended. Tell everyone he cheated on me with my own cousin? Use my grief as an opportunity to steal my home? I'm going to lose everything, she sobbed. Sophia and I will be homeless. I owe so much money. Derek left us with nothing. I couldn't see any other way. You could have asked for help, I said. You could have been honest with family about your situation. Instead, you chose to lie, to forge documents, to hurt me when I was already broken? I know, Vanessa whispered. I know it was wrong. I just thought, you have so much, and I have nothing. It seemed fair. Fair? My voice rose despite my intention to stay calm. Fair would have been treating me like family instead of a target. Fair would have been considering that I just lost my husband, the love of my life, and that I'm grieving and vulnerable. What you did wasn't fair, Vanessa. It was cruel. She buried her face in her hands, her whole body shaking with sobs. I felt a war inside myself, sympathy fighting with anger, family loyalty battling with self-preservation. Gerald let the silence hang for a moment before speaking again. Ms. Martinez, Mrs. Chen has asked me not to press criminal charges, despite having every legal right to do so. Instead, she's prepared to offer you an alternative. Vanessa looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. What alternative? I took a deep breath. You're going to admit publicly that you lied. You'll tell our family that you forged the will, that Marcus never had an affair with you, and that Sophia is Derek's daughter, not Marcus's. You'll apologize to me, and to Marcus's memory. Okay, Vanessa said quickly. Okay, I'll do that. I'll tell everyone the truth. I'm not finished, I continued. You'll also sign a legal agreement stating that you'll never make any claims against Marcus's estate or my assets. You'll agree to court-supervised boundaries regarding contact with me, and you'll enter mandatory therapy and financial counseling. Vanessa nodded eagerly. Yes, I'll do all of that. Thank you, Elena. Thank you so much. And in exchange, I said, I'll help you. Not by giving you half my house or any significant amount of money, but by setting up a trust fund for Sophia's medical needs and education. $25,000 to start, with potential for more depending on proven expenses. I'll also pay your back rent to stop the eviction and give you 2 months to find more affordable housing. Her eyes widened. You'd still help me? After what I did? Not for you, I said bluntly. For Sophia. She's innocent in all of this, and she deserves stability and medical care. And because Marcus would want me to help his niece, even though her mother tried to destroy him. There are conditions, Gerald interjected. If you violate the agreement in any way, if you make any further fraudulent claims, if you try to exploit Mrs. Chen's generosity, the trust fund stops immediately, and we will press criminal charges. Do you understand? Yes, Vanessa said. I understand. I won't mess this up, I promise. We'll see, I said. Gerald will draw up the paperwork. You'll sign it in front of witnesses, and then we'll arrange for you to make your confession to the family. And a sentence. Over the next week, Gerald prepared a comprehensive legal agreement that Vanessa signed in his office with 3 witnesses present. The document outlined every condition, every boundary, every consequence for violation. It was thorough and unambiguous. I transferred $30,000 from my savings account, $25,000 for Sophia's trust fund, and $5,000 to cover Vanessa's back rent and help with moving expenses. It hurt to write those checks, not because of the money, but because I was paying to clean up a mess my cousin had created out of greed and desperation. The family meeting took place on a Sunday evening at my parents' house. I'd asked everyone to come, my parents, my aunt and uncle, a few close cousins who'd been at Sophia's birthday party. I wanted everyone who'd heard Vanessa's lies to hear the truth. My mother had been confused when I requested the gathering. Is everything all right? You're worrying me, Elena. Everything will be explained tonight, I'd said. Just please make sure everyone can be there. When I arrived with Gerald, who I'd asked to accompany me as a witness, my family was gathered in the living room, looking curious and concerned. Vanessa was already there, sitting on the couch, with Sophia on her lap, looking pale but determined. Thank you all for coming, I said, standing near the fireplace where everyone could see me. I know this is unusual, but there's something important that needs to be addressed. My father leaned forward in his chair. What's this about, Elena? It's about the claims Vanessa made 3 weeks ago, I said, about Marcus and Sophia and the will. The room went very quiet. Everyone remembered Vanessa's announcement, the shock and gossip that had followed. Vanessa has something she needs to tell you, I continued, looking at my cousin. Go ahead. Vanessa took a deep breath, holding Sophia closer. I lied, she said, her voice shaking. About everything. Marcus and I never had an affair. Sophia isn't his daughter. She's Derek's. And the will I showed Elena was forged. I created it myself because I was desperate for money. My mother gasped. My aunt made a strangled sound. My father's face went red with anger. You what? My aunt demanded. Vanessa Marie Martinez. Tell me you're joking. I'm not joking, Mom, Vanessa said, tears starting to fall. I'm $95,000 in debt. I was about to be evicted. I didn't know what else to do. I thought if I could get half of Elena's house, Sophia and I would be okay. So you decided to destroy your cousin's life? My father said, his voice harsh. While she was grieving her husband? I know it was wrong, Vanessa sobbed. I know there's no excuse. I was desperate and stupid and cruel. Elena would have every right to press charges against me, but she's not going to. Why not? My uncle asked, looking at me. Vanessa committed a crime. Because Sophia needs her mother, I said quietly. And because family is complicated and messy, and sometimes we have to find ways forward that aren't about punishment, but about healing and boundaries. I explained the agreement Vanessa and I had reached, the trust fund for Sophia, the therapy and counseling requirements, the legal boundaries that would protect me from future exploitation. My family listened in stunned silence. That's incredibly generous, my aunt said finally, wiping tears from her eyes. More generous than Vanessa deserves. Maybe, I agreed. But it's what Marcus would have wanted. He always said family was worth fighting for, even when they hurt us. My mother came over and hugged me tightly. I'm so sorry you had to deal with this on top of everything else. We should have been there for you better. You were there, I said, as much as you could be. Vanessa approached me hesitantly, still holding Sophia. Elena, I don't know how to apologize enough. What I did was unforgivable. You're right, it probably is unforgivable, I said, looking at her directly. But we're going to try anyway. Not for us, but for Sophia. She deserves to have family who show up for her, even when it's hard. Thank you, Vanessa whispered. I'll prove I can do better. I promise. We'll see, I said, and took Sophia from her arms. The little girl came willingly, wrapping her arms around my neck. Hey, sweetheart, I murmured to her. You're going to be okay. Your Auntie Elena is going to make sure of it. The rest of the evening was difficult, with family members asking questions, expressing shock and anger, trying to process everything. But slowly, a new understanding began to form. Vanessa had made terrible choices, but she would be held accountable. Sophia would be protected, and I would maintain boundaries that kept me safe while still honoring my role as her aunt. When I left that night, Gerald walked me to my car. You handled that with remarkable grace, he said. Marcus would be proud. I hope so, I said. I keep wondering what he'd think of all this. I think he'd think you were being exactly who he fell in love with. Strong, kind, and unwilling to let bitterness win. The weeks after the family meeting brought slow, steady changes. Vanessa started therapy, attending sessions twice a week with a counselor who specialized in financial trauma and family dynamics. She also began meeting with a financial advisor I'd helped her find, someone who created a realistic budget and payment plan for her debts. True to the agreement, I'd paid her back rent, which gave her breathing room to find a more affordable apartment. She moved to a smaller place in Renton, a 2-bedroom unit that was older but clean and safe. I helped her move, packing boxes alongside other family members who were slowly learning to trust her again. The trust fund for Sophia was established through Gerald's office, with clear guidelines about how the money could be accessed. Medical expenses and education only, with receipts required for every disbursement. Vanessa couldn't touch the principal, only request reimbursement for Sophia's legitimate needs. I visited Sophia once a week, taking her to the park or the zoo, or just spending quiet afternoons reading books together. She was 3 years old and blissfully unaware of the adult drama that had swirled around her. To her, I was just Auntie Elena, who brought snacks and told silly stories and pushed her on the swings. My relationship with Vanessa remained strained. We were polite, cordial even, but the easy closeness we'd once shared was gone. Maybe it had never really been there. Just an illusion of sisterhood covering deeper resentments and jealousies. Now we had something different, something more honest if less comfortable. We were family, but we were also careful with each other, aware of past hurts and future vulnerabilities. My parents struggled with the new family dynamic. My mother especially wanted everything to go back to normal, to pretend the whole thing had been a misunderstanding that we could all move past. Can't you two just talk it out? She asked me one afternoon over tea. Really forgive each other and start fresh? Mom, Vanessa tried to steal my house by claiming my dead husband had an affair with her. I said as gently as I could. That's not something you just talk out over coffee. We're doing the best we can, but we'll probably never be close again. And that's okay. But family should respect boundaries. I interrupted. Family should be honest. Family should protect each other, not exploit vulnerability. We're rebuilding on those principles now. It looks different than what we had before, but it's healthier. My mother didn't like it, but she gradually accepted it. And to her credit, she stopped making excuses for Vanessa's behavior, something that represented real growth on her part. 6 months after Marcus's death, I finally felt ready to tackle his office, the room I'd avoided since reading his letter to me. I spent a Sunday afternoon going through his files, his books, the little notes he'd left himself on post-its stuck to his monitor. In the back of his desk drawer, I found a journal I'd never seen before. It wasn't the official documentation he'd kept for Gerald, but something more personal, a record of his thoughts and feelings over the years. I sat on the floor of his office and read it cover to cover. There were entries about our early dates, his nervousness about proposing, his joy on our wedding day. There were reflections on our infertility struggles, his own feelings of inadequacy and loss. There were notes about the house projects we tackled together, the trips we'd taken, the quiet moments of happiness that made up our daily life. And there were entries about Vanessa. Elena's cousin made another uncomfortable comment today. Asked me if I ever wondered what it would be like to be with someone younger, more spontaneous. Elena laughed it off, but I saw the calculation in Vanessa's eyes. She's testing boundaries, seeing how far she can push. I need to document this. Vanessa sent another late-night text. This one was more direct, suggesting Elena doesn't appreciate what she has. I blocked her number and told Elena immediately. Her face fell when I told her. She tries so hard to believe the best in people, especially family. It's one of the things I love most about her, but it also makes her vulnerable. Had my vasectomy follow-up today. All clear. Procedure was successful. Elena and I grieved the finality of it last night, but I know it was the right decision. Part of me wonders if Vanessa's behavior will escalate now that she knows we can't have children. She's always competed with Elena, and infertility is a vulnerability she might try to exploit. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm going to prepare anyway. Met with Gerald today to update my will and create documentation about Vanessa's behavior. Elena thinks I'm being paranoid, and maybe I am. But I've seen enough in my legal career to know that people do terrible things when motivated by jealousy and desperation. If something happens to me, I need Elena to be protected. She's too kind, too forgiving. Someone has to look out for her. I love my wife more than I thought possible to love another person. Every day with her is a gift. If I die tomorrow, I'll have lived a full, beautiful life because of her. But I hope for at least 50 more years of mornings waking up beside her, of quiet evenings on our porch swing, of building dreams together, even when those dreams look different than we planned. I closed the journal and pressed it against my chest, crying harder than I had since the day Marcus died. He'd known. He'd seen Vanessa's true nature and had tried to protect me from it. Even his death couldn't stop him from caring for me, from anticipating my needs, from building shields around my heart. I miss you so much, I whispered to the empty room. Every day, every moment, but you're still taking care of me, aren't you? You're still here in all the ways that matter. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. 1 year after Marcus's death, I organized a memorial gathering at our house. Not a somber affair, but a celebration of his life. His colleagues from work, our friends, family members who wanted to remember him with joy instead of grief. I displayed photos from our years together, our engagement on the waterfront, our wedding in the botanical garden, trips we'd taken, ordinary moments that captured his essence. I set out the bronze sculpture he'd given me that first night we met. The intertwined hands reaching but never quite touching, now a symbol of how love transcends physical presence. People shared stories about Marcus. His coworkers talked about his brilliant problem-solving and his kindness to junior developers. Our friends remembered his terrible jokes and his thoughtful gestures. My parents spoke about how he'd become the son they'd never had. Vanessa came with Sophia. She stayed in the background, not drawing attention to herself, but she brought flowers and a card with a simple message inside. Thank you for letting me still be part of this family. I don't deserve it. Love, Vanessa. At one point in the evening, Sophia tugged on my hand. Auntie Elena, can I see Uncle Marcus? My throat tightened. Uncle Marcus isn't here anymore, sweetheart. Remember? He had to go to heaven. Oh, she said, processing this with the simple acceptance of a child. Will he come back? No, baby, but he loved you very much. And I'm here. I'll always be here for you. She hugged my leg and then ran off to play with a ball in the backyard. I watched her go, this innocent child who'd been used as a pawn in adult games, and felt grateful that at least her future was secure. Near the end of the evening, I stood on the back porch where Marcus had built the raised garden beds. The vegetables were growing well, tended by my weekly care and the memory of his hands in the soil. I thought about how life continues even when we think it can't, how grief and hope can coexist in the same heart. My best friend Rachel joined me on the porch, 2 glasses of wine in her hands. She passed one to me without speaking, and we stood in companionable silence watching the sunset over Seattle. How are you really doing? She asked eventually. Better than I expected, I said honestly. Some days are still impossible. I'll be designing a room and turn to tell Marcus about a color choice, and then remember he's not there. But other days I feel okay, like I'm learning to carry him with me instead of constantly looking for where he should be. He'd be proud of how you've handled everything with Vanessa, Rachel said. You could have destroyed her, and instead, you found a way to protect yourself while still helping Sophia. I had a good teacher, I replied, thinking of Marcus's thoughtful preparation, his ability to anticipate problems and create solutions. He taught me that protecting yourself doesn't mean becoming hard. It means being wise about boundaries while keeping your heart open to real connection. That's beautiful, Rachel said. It's also really hard, I admitted. Some days I want to be angry, to hold grudges, to make Vanessa pay for what she did. But what would that accomplish? Sophia would suffer. Our family would fracture even more, and I'd become someone Marcus wouldn't recognize. We finished our wine as darkness fell, the city lights of Seattle twinkling in the distance. Guests began leaving, offering final hugs and words of support. Vanessa left early with Sophia, thanking me quietly for including them. When everyone was gone, I walked through the house Marcus and I had made together. The living room with its stone fireplace and custom bookshelves. The kitchen where we'd learned to cook together. The bedroom where we'd shared our deepest fears and greatest hopes. The office where his journal still sat in the drawer. A record of a life well lived and a love that endured. I ended in the garden, sitting on the bench Marcus had built the summer before he died. The stars were coming out, scattered across the darkening sky like promises. We did it, I said softly, as if Marcus could hear me. We made a home, built a life, loved each other fiercely. And when everything fell apart, your love still protected me. The documents you prepared, the boundaries you established, the words you left me, they all saved me when I was most vulnerable. A breeze moved through the garden, rustling the leaves of the tomato plants. I chose to believe it was Marcus's way of responding, of letting me know he was still there in spirit if not in body. I'm going to be okay, I continued. It'll take time, but I'm stronger than I knew. You helped me discover that strength. And I'll keep honoring your memory by living fully, by protecting what matters, and by finding joy, even in the midst of grief. The weeks and months that followed brought gradual healing. I took on new design projects, channeling my grief into creative work that pushed my skills and expanded my business. I started volunteering at a grief support group, using my experience to help others navigate loss. I traveled to places Marcus and I had always wanted to visit, carrying his memory with me to new horizons. My relationship with Vanessa remained formal but functional. She continued therapy and made steady progress paying down her debts. She found a better job with benefits at a medical office, providing stability for herself and Sophia. We attended family functions together, polite but distant, united only in our love for Sophia. Some people asked if I'd ever truly forgive her. I didn't have a good answer. Forgiveness felt like too simple a word for the complex mix of emotions I carried. Anger at her betrayal, sadness for what we'd lost, sympathy for her desperation, gratitude that the situation hadn't destroyed more than it did. Maybe true forgiveness would come eventually. Or maybe we'd simply learn to coexist with the fractured pieces of our relationship, making something new from what remained. Sophia continued to thrive. Her heart condition was monitored regularly, and the trust fund I'd established ensured she received the best medical care. She started preschool and made friends, a bright, happy child who deserved every opportunity life could offer. I remained active in her life, picking her up from school sometimes, taking her on adventures around Seattle, reading her bedtime stories when Vanessa needed a break. In my heart, she was my niece, the closest thing I'd have to a daughter. Not because Marcus was her father, he wasn't, but because family is built through love and commitment, not just biology. 2 years after Marcus's death, I met someone. His name was Daniel, an architect who came to me for help redesigning his office space. He was kind and patient, understanding about my grief and the fact that my heart still belonged partially to the man I'd lost. We took things slowly, building a friendship that gradually deepened into something more. I told him about Vanessa early on, wanting him to know the complicated family dynamics he'd be stepping into. He listened to the whole story without judgment. "You turned something ugly into something bearable," he said when I finished. "That takes remarkable strength and grace." "It took survival instinct and a really good lawyer," I replied with a sad smile. "Marcus prepared for the worst and gave me the tools I needed to protect myself. I just followed his blueprint." "He must have loved you very much." "He did, and I loved him. I still do, in a way that doesn't diminish what I might feel for someone else. Is that okay?" "More than okay," Daniel said, taking my hand gently. "Love doesn't run out. There's room for both past and future in a full heart." We'd been dating for 6 months when he met my family for the first time at a holiday dinner. I watched nervously as he shook hands with my parents, chatted with my aunt and uncle, and made small talk with Vanessa. He was gracious with everyone, never prying into the difficult history, but acknowledging it when appropriate. At one point, Sophia climbed into his lap and showed him a picture she'd drawn. He examined it seriously, asking questions about the colors and shapes, making her giggle with his silly voices. My heart swelled watching them, this small glimpse of what future happiness might look like. "He's a good man," my mother whispered to me in the kitchen. "Different from Marcus, but good in his own way." "He is," I agreed. "But Mom, I need you to understand something. I'm not replacing Marcus. Daniel and I are building something new, but Marcus will always be part of my life. His memory, his love, the home we created together. That doesn't disappear just because I'm moving forward." "I know, sweetheart," she said, hugging me. "And anyone who truly loves you will understand that too." 3 years after Marcus's death, I stood in the garden he'd planted, watching Sophia chase butterflies through the flowers. She was 6 now, full of energy and questions and the unshakable confidence that comes from being loved unconditionally. Vanessa sat on the bench nearby, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in years. Therapy and financial stability had changed her, softened the desperate edges that had driven her to such destructive choices. We'd never be as close as we once were, but we'd found a way to coexist peacefully, bound together by our love for the child playing in the sunshine. "Thank you," Vanessa said quietly, watching Sophia, "for not giving up on us, for giving me a chance to be better." "You did the hard work yourself," I replied. "All I did was provide an opportunity." "No, you did more than that. You could have destroyed me, had me arrested, taken Sophia away. Instead, you found a way to help while still protecting yourself. That took strength I didn't know existed. I thought about Marcus's words in his letter, about not letting people use my kindness as a weapon. It was a balance, I said, compassion with boundaries, love without being a doormat. Marcus taught me that it's possible to be both soft and strong. He was a good man, Vanessa said. I'm sorry for what I tried to do to his memory. I know you are. We sat in silence for a while, watching Sophia discover a ladybug on a leaf. The sun was warm, the garden was blooming, and despite everything, the loss, the betrayal, the pain, life was good again. Not the same life I'd had before. That life had died with Marcus, but a new life, built on the foundation he'd helped me create. A life where I was stronger, wiser, more aware of my own worth, and less willing to compromise my well-being for the comfort of others. I had learned that you can honor family while still protecting yourself. That forgiveness doesn't always look like reconciliation. That grief and joy can coexist in the same heart, making room for both the memory of deep love lost and the possibility of new love found. Most importantly, I'd learned that the people who truly love us continue caring for us even after they're gone. Marcus's thoughtful preparation, his understanding of human nature, his desire to protect me, all of it reached across the barrier of death to shield me when I was most vulnerable. That evening, after Vanessa and Sophia had gone home, I sat on the porch swing Marcus had hung the summer before he died. I opened his journal to a random page and read his words about an ordinary Tuesday, about coming home from work to find me in the garden, about how the evening light had caught in my hair and made him fall in love with me all over again. I'm doing okay, I whispered to his memory. Some days are hard, but I'm building something good. Something you'd be proud of. I'm protecting myself the way you taught me. I'm loving Sophia the way you'd want me to. And maybe, eventually, I'll even find a way to open my heart fully to someone new. But you'll always be here, in this house, in this garden, in the strong foundation you helped me build. The swing moved gently in the evening breeze, and I let myself believe it was Marcus's way of agreeing, of telling me he was proud, of reminding me that love transcends even death itself. Because that's what I'd learned through all of this. Love isn't just what we feel while people are alive. It's what they leave behind, in documents prepared with foresight, in gardens planted with hope, in lessons taught through example, in the strength they help us discover within ourselves. Marcus had left me protected, not just with legal documents and medical records, but with the knowledge of my own worth, the understanding that compassion doesn't mean allowing others to harm us, and the certainty that I could survive even the worst loss and somehow, eventually, find my way back to joy. And so I had, not by forgetting him or replacing him, but by carrying his love forward into a future he'd helped prepare for, even knowing he wouldn't be there to see it. That was his final gift to me, protection that lasted beyond his lifetime, love that endured past death, and the tools I needed to build a new life on the foundation we'd created together. As darkness fell over Seattle, I went inside the house we'd made into a home. I turned on the lights, started water for tea, and pulled out design sketches for a new project. Life continued, as it always does, carrying within it both the weight of loss and the possibility of renewal. And somewhere, I believed, Marcus was watching and smiling, knowing that his greatest legacy wasn't the house or the money or even the protective documents he'd left behind. It was teaching me that love means preparing someone to survive without you, giving them not just your presence, but the tools to stand strong in your absence. That was true love. And it was enough. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you.